As we embark on this gentle exploration of human curiosity and its sometimes troubling consequences, we invite you to share where and when you are listening. Perhaps it's the quiet of night or the first light of dawn. If our journey aids you in drifting into slumber, we kindly ask you to subscribe, joining us in these thoughtful wanderings. Human curiosity has always been a powerful force, driving us to explore the unknown, understand the universe, and unravel the mysteries of life itself. It has led to remarkable discoveries and innovations, from the depths of the oceans to the vastness of space. Yet, this insatiable curiosity has also, at times, guided us into darker territories, where the boundaries of ethics and humanity have been tested and often breached. As we begin this exploration, let us hold in our minds the understanding that each story is more than a historical account. It is a reflection on the human condition. It is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to reaffirm our commitment to ethical principles that safeguard the dignity and rights of all individuals. Let us proceed with curiosity, tempered by empathy, and with a commitment to ensuring that the pursuit of knowledge remains a force for good in our world. And so, with these reflections in mind, we embark on our journey through the annals of human experimentation, guided by the light of understanding and the promise of learning from the past to build a more just and compassionate future. In the summer of 1971, a quiet corridor within Stanford University's psychology department became the unlikely stage for a dramatic and unsettling exploration of human behavior. The Stanford prison experiment, conceived by psychologist Philip Zimbardo, sought to investigate the psychological effects of perceived power, focusing on the struggle between prisoners and prison guards. But what began as a controlled study quickly spiraled into a profound and alarming demonstration of how easily ordinary individuals could slip into roles that led to unexpected cruelty and distress. The experiment was simple in its design. Zimbardo and his team transformed the basement of the Stanford Psychology Building into a makeshift prison. Volunteers, all college students, were randomly assigned roles as either guards or prisoners. It was an exercise in role-play, intended to last 2 weeks, with each participant promised a modest fee for their involvement. Yet, what unfolded in those dimly lit hallways would leave an indelible mark on the field of psychology and serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of human morality under the influence of authority and situational pressures. From the outset, the simulation took on a life of its own. The guards, adorned in khaki uniforms and sunglasses that obscured their eyes, were instructed to maintain order, but given no explicit guidelines on how to do so. This vagueness was intentional, an open invitation for interpretation. The prisoners, meanwhile, were stripped of their individuality, clad in smocks with identification numbers, and subjected to a dehumanizing routine designed to replicate the experience of incarceration. Within a remarkably short time, the boundaries between role-playing and reality began to blur. The guards, many of whom had started the experiment with no apparent aggressive tendencies, adopted authoritarian personas. They enforced arbitrary rules and meted out psychological punishment. Prisoners were subjected to verbal abuse, solitary confinement, and increasingly humiliating tasks. Astonishingly, some guards displayed a disturbing enthusiasm for their newfound power, a transformation that seemed almost theatrical, yet terrifyingly real. The prisoners, on the other hand, began to internalize their roles with unsettling speed. Stripped of their autonomy, They exhibited signs of emotional breakdown, anxiety, and despair. Some became passive, resigned to their fate, while others rebelled, only to be met with harsher measures. The psychological toll was evident, with one participant suffering such acute distress that he had to be removed from the study after just 36 hours. Zimbardo himself, acting as the prison superintendent, became embroiled in the unfolding drama, losing his objectivity as he was drawn into the experiment's lore. It wasn't until the intervention of Christina Maslach, a graduate student and Zimbardo's future wife, that the ethical implications became glaringly apparent. Shocked by the conditions and the participants' mental states, Maslach challenged Zimbardo to reassess the morality of the study. Her outside perspective provided a crucial jolt of reality, leading to the premature termination of the experiment after only 6 days. The Stanford prison experiment raised profound questions about the nature of authority, compliance, and human behavior. How could ordinary individuals, devoid of any malicious intent, descend into roles that perpetuated harm and abuse? Zimbardo's findings suggested that situational factors, rather than inherent personality traits, could heavily influence behavior. The experiment illustrated how social environments and perceived power dynamics could lead to actions that defied personal moral codes. The implications of the experiment were far-reaching. It cast a spotlight on the ethical conduct of psychological research, prompting discussions about the responsibilities of researchers to their subjects. The study is often cited as a catalyst for the establishment of more stringent ethical guidelines governing human experimentation, ensuring that participants' welfare is prioritized. Yet, the Stanford prison experiment is not without its critics. Some have argued that the participants were encouraged, albeit subtly, to act in ways that aligned with Zimbardo's hypotheses. Others have questioned the validity of its findings, given the artificial nature of the setup and the small sample size. However, regardless of these criticisms, the experiment remains a powerful testament to the potential for situational forces to shape human behavior in unsettling ways. As we reflect on the events that transpired in that basement in 1971, we are reminded of the delicate balance between individual agency and the influence of context. The Stanford prison experiment serves as both a cautionary tale and a springboard for deeper inquiry into the human psyche. It challenges us to consider how we might act under similar circumstances, and underscores the importance of maintaining ethical vigilance in the pursuit of scientific knowledge. In the end, perhaps the most enduring lesson of the Stanford prison experiment is a simple yet profound one. The capacity for both good and evil resides within us all, often dictated less by who we are than by the roles we assume and the environments we inhabit. Such insights continue to resonate, prompting reflection not just on the study's historical context, but on the complexities of human behavior that remain as relevant today as they were over 50 years ago. In the early 1960s, a young psychologist named Stanley Milgram embarked on a series of experiments at Yale University that would forever change our understanding of human nature. These studies were not conducted in secret, nor were they shrouded in mystery. Rather, they were meticulously planned and executed with the intention of exploring one of the most profound questions of the human condition. Why do ordinary people commit acts of cruelty under the command of authority? Milgram's inspiration stemmed from the trials of Adolf Eichmann, a Nazi officer responsible for the logistics of the Holocaust. The world watched as Eichmann, a seemingly unremarkable man, claimed he was simply following orders. This defense intrigued Milgram. He wondered whether Eichmann's behavior was an aberration, or if people, under the right conditions, might all be capable of such obedience. In his experiment, Milgram devised a simple yet powerful setup. Participants were recruited under the guise of a learning study. They were introduced to a stern experimenter in a lab coat, who instructed them to administer electric shocks to a learner, a confederate or actor, seated in an adjacent room. The shocks would increase in intensity with each incorrect answer given by the learner. The shock generator, with switches labeled from 15 volts, slight shock, to 450 volts, slight XXXX, was nothing more than a prop. Yet, the participants believed it to be real. As the learner intentionally gave incorrect answers, the participants were urged to deliver increasingly severe shocks. The learner, audible through the wall, began to feign discomfort, then pain, and eventually begged for the experiment to stop. Despite this, participants were often met with calm but firm prompts from the experimenter, urging them to continue. What unfolded was startling. A significant majority of participants, roughly 65%, continued to administer shocks up to the maximum 450 volts, even as the learner fell silent, suggesting severe harm or unconsciousness. This was not a study about sadism or cruelty, but rather the unsettling ease with which ordinary people could be led to act against their moral compass under the influence of perceived authority. Milgram's findings were profound and troubling. They suggested that the structure of authority could override personal conscience, leading individuals to perform acts they would otherwise find reprehensible. The experiment highlighted the potential for obedience to authority to facilitate atrocities, echoing the horrors of wartime obedience. Critics of Milgram's work have raised ethical concerns, noting the emotional distress experienced by participants who believed they had harmed another person. The study also sparked debates on the ethical boundaries of psychological research, influencing guidelines and protocols for future studies. Despite these controversies, Milgram's research remains a cornerstone in social psychology. It compels us to reflect on the power of authority and the conditions under which we might relinquish our agency. It prompts introspection about the nature of obedience and the moral dilemmas we might face in obeying orders that conflict with our values. The implications of Milgram's work extend beyond the confines of the laboratory. They remind us of the importance of questioning authority and the need to foster environments where ethical considerations are paramount. The study serves as a cautionary tale, urging vigilance against the seductive pull of authority and the potential for ordinary individuals to become agents of harm under its influence. Milgram's obedience studies, with their unsettling revelations, continue to resonate in a world where authority can still lead to acts of inhumanity. They challenge us to consider how we might cultivate a society that values ethical decision-making and individual responsibility, even in the face of authority. As we ponder these questions, we are reminded of the delicate balance between obedience and morality, a balance that shapes the fabric of our shared human experience. In the tapestry of human experimentation, there are threads that unravel into tales of profound disturbance, where the relentless pursuit of knowledge left behind a trail of unintended consequences. One such thread is the story of the monster study, an experiment that began in the year 1939, nestled within the quiet corridors of the University of Iowa. Here, under the guidance of Wendell Johnson, a speech pathology professor with a personal vendetta against stuttering, an experiment took shape that would echo through the lives of its participants long after the final data was recorded. Wendell Johnson himself had battled with stuttering from a young age, and it was this personal struggle that fueled his desire to understand the condition. He postulated that stuttering was not an inherent defect of speech, but rather a learned behavior, one that could be induced or perhaps exacerbated by the power of suggestion. To test this hypothesis, Johnson turned to his graduate student, Mary Tudor, tasking her with the delicate and ethically fraught responsibility of carrying out the study. The participants were 22 orphan children, ranging in age from 5 to 15, who were living at the Iowa Soldiers' Orphans' Home in Davenport. They were unwittingly drafted into an experiment that would forever alter their perception of themselves and their ability to communicate with the world. The children were divided into two groups. One group, which included children who already exhibited signs of stuttering, received positive speech therapy, where their fluency was praised and encouraged. The other group, comprising children who spoke normally, were subjected to a much darker intervention. In this latter group, Tudor and her team employed negative reinforcement, focusing on any minor speech imperfection and labeling these as signs of stuttering. The children were told that they had a problem, that they stuttered, even if they had never shown such tendencies before. The power of suggestion, wielded with authority and repetition, began to weave its insidious influence. Tudor reported that the children in this group became self-conscious, withdrawn, and reluctant to speak, fearing the gaze of judgment that seemed to follow every word. As the weeks turned into months, the weight of the experiment bore heavily on Tudor. She expressed doubts and concerns about the ethical implications of their work, yet the momentum of the study continued unabated. The outcomes, as meticulously recorded in their notes, began to reveal the truth of Johnson's hypothesis. Stuttering could indeed be induced, but at what cost? The children who were subjected to negative reinforcement suffered long-term consequences that extended far beyond the scope of the study. Many developed speech impediments and psychological issues that plagued them into adulthood. The experiment, intended to shed light on the nature of stuttering, instead cast a shadow over the lives of its participants, illustrating the profound impact that language and suggestion can have on the human psyche. In reflecting on the monster study, we are reminded of the fragile nature of identity and self-perception, particularly in the formative years of childhood. The experiment stands as a testament to the ethical boundaries that must be navigated with care and respect, especially when dealing with vulnerable populations. It serves as a poignant example of how the pursuit of scientific knowledge, when untethered from ethical considerations, can lead to outcomes that are as monstrous as the fears it seeks to understand. The long-term implications of the monster study extend beyond the individual lives it affected. It prompted a re-evaluation of research ethics, highlighting the necessity for informed consent and the protection of participants from harm. As we ponder the lessons of this dark chapter in scientific history, we are reminded of the responsibility that rests upon the shoulders of those who seek to explore the mysteries of the human mind and behavior. In the quiet reflection that follows, we find ourselves contemplating the power of words and the profound impact they can have on the human spirit. The monster study, with all its troubling intricacies, serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between curiosity and compassion, a balance that must be carefully maintained as we continue to explore the vast expanse of human potential. As we drift into the gentle embrace of slumber, let us carry with us the lesson that knowledge, while a powerful tool, must always be wielded with the utmost care and respect for those who lend their lives to its pursuit. In the early years of the 20th century, the world of psychology was abuzz with the promise of new discoveries. It was a time when the mind was seen as a vast, uncharted frontier ripe for exploration. Among the pioneers of this domain was John B. Watson, a figure determined to unravel the mysteries of human behavior through the lens of conditioning. Watson, a proponent of behaviorism, believed fervently that emotions were not innate but rather learned responses to stimuli. In 1920, he embarked on an experiment that would come to be known as the Little Albert Experiment, a study that sought to demonstrate the principles of classical conditioning on a human subject. The subject, referred to as Little Albert, was an infant of approximately 9 months, introduced to a variety of stimuli including a white rat, a rabbit, a monkey, and various masks. Initially, Albert displayed no fear towards these objects, interacting with them with the innocent curiosity one might expect from a child. Watson, however, had different plans. He intended to condition fear into the child using the white rat as his primary tool. The process of conditioning began with the introduction of a loud, jarring noise, produced by striking a metal bar with a hammer, each time Albert reached out for the rat. The sound was sudden, unpleasant, and deeply distressing for the child. After several such pairings, Albert began to associate the previously benign rat with this frightening noise. Subsequently, the mere sight of the rat was enough to elicit a fearful response, even in the absence of the noise. This experiment was a stark demonstration of Pavlovian principles, illustrating how a neutral stimulus could be transformed into something terrifying through association. What makes this experiment particularly unsettling, however, is not merely the conditioning of fear itself, but rather the lack of any attempt to reverse the effects. Albert was left with these conditioned fears, a legacy of the experiment that would, presumably, linger long after the study concluded. The ethical implications of such an oversight are significant, highlighting a profound disregard for the well-being of the subject. Watson's experiment also raises questions about the broader implications of conditioned responses. If fear could be so easily instilled, what other emotions and behaviors might be similarly manipulated? This line of inquiry touches upon the very essence of human experience, prompting us to consider the extent to which our emotions and reactions are shaped by the environments in which we find ourselves. In the years following the experiment, little Albert's fate remained something of a mystery. Efforts to locate him and assess any long-term impacts of the study have been inconclusive, leaving us to ponder the potential consequences of Watson's work. This uncertainty serves as a poignant reminder of the ethical responsibilities inherent in psychological research, particularly when it involves vulnerable subjects. Watson's approach was emblematic of a time when the scientific community was often willing to sacrifice individual welfare on the altar of knowledge. His belief in the power of conditioning was unwavering, but it came at a cost borne by a child who likely never comprehended the reasons behind his newfound fears. As we reflect on this chapter of psychological history, we are invited to consider the delicate balance between scientific inquiry and ethical responsibility. The pursuit of understanding must be tempered by compassion, recognizing that the subjects of our studies are not merely data points, but individuals with lives and experiences of their own. The Little Albert experiment stands as a testament to both the potential and the peril of psychological research. It offers insights into the mechanisms of conditioning, but also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of overzealous experimentation. In its aftermath, we are reminded that the quest for knowledge, while noble, must always be guided by a steadfast commitment to ethical principles. In the quiet moments of reflection that follow, we might ponder the broader implications of conditioning in our own lives. How often do we react to situations based on learned associations rather than rational thought? The echoes of little Albert's experience may be more familiar than we care to admit, woven into the fabric of our daily interactions and responses. As the story of little Albert draws to a close, we are left with a lingering sense of unease, a recognition of the complexities and responsibilities that accompany the study of the human mind. In the gentle cadence of our thoughts, we might find solace in the hope that future explorations will be conducted with a deeper awareness of the ethical dimensions that underpin their pursuit. Through such reflection, we can aspire to a more compassionate and understanding approach to the mysteries of human behavior. In the golden warmth of an Oklahoma summer in 1954, nestled within what appeared to be a typical American summer camp, unfolded a carefully orchestrated social experiment that would leave an indelible mark on the field of psychology. Here, at the Robbers Cave State Park, psychologist Muzaffar Sherif and his team embarked upon a study that would delve deep into the murky waters of intergroup relations and conflict. The Robbers Cave experiment, as it came to be known, was not merely a study of boys at play, it was an exploration of the seeds of human conflict, how they are sown, and perhaps how they might be reconciled. The participants, 22 boys, all aged around 11, had been meticulously selected. They were average in every respect, or so the researchers hoped. Middle class, Protestant, and with no prior acquaintance with each other, these boys were transported to the camp under the guise of a summer adventure. The stage was set for a controlled study that would simulate real-world social dynamics, albeit in a microcosm. The boys were divided into two groups, each unaware of the other's existence initially. The Rattlers and the Eagles, as they later christened themselves, were encouraged to bond within their groups through a series of cooperative tasks, fostering a sense of camaraderie and solidarity. It was a simple beginning, yet one that mirrored the natural formation of social groups, a phenomenon as old as humanity itself. As the days progressed, the researchers introduced the two groups to one another, igniting the spark of competition with carefully contrived contests. The boys, who had become fiercely loyal to their respective groups, soon found themselves caught in the throes of rivalry. What began with spirited games of tug-of-war and baseball swiftly escalated into hostility and sabotage. Accusations flew and thefts occurred as the boys, in their quest for supremacy, mirrored the conflicts that echo through human history. Sherif's intent was to illustrate how quickly and easily such divisions could form, even among those who were ostensibly the same in many respects. The experiment's genius lay in its simplicity. In manipulating the conditions under which the boys operated, Sherif demonstrated the ease with which in-group bias and out-group hostility could be fostered. The findings spoke volumes about the nature of human conflict, how it often arises not from inherent differences, but from perceived competition and threat. Yet, the experiment was not merely an exercise in fostering discord. As the tensions reached a crescendo, the researchers embarked on the next phase, reconciliation. They devised scenarios requiring cooperation between the groups, tasks that necessitated a joint effort to achieve a common goal. Whether it was fixing a water supply or pooling resources for a shared feast, these superordinate goals gradually diminished the animosity between the Eagles and the Rattlers. Slowly, suspicion gave way to understanding and collaboration. The implications of Sheriff's work at Robbers Cave extended beyond the confines of the camp. It offered insights into the mechanisms of conflict resolution, suggesting that shared objectives could bridge divides that seemed insurmountable. This was not merely a revelation for the realm of psychology, but a beacon for societies grappling with division and discord. It proposed that the threads of unity lay within the very fabric of our collective goals and aspirations. The Robbers Cave experiment, however, was not without its criticisms. Ethical considerations, particularly regarding the lack of informed consent and the emotional distress inflicted upon the boys, have been points of contention. In the pursuit of understanding, the researchers had, perhaps, overlooked the immediate welfare of their young subjects. Yet, this too serves as a poignant reminder of the delicate balance between scientific inquiry and ethical responsibility, a theme recurrent in the annals of psychological research. In reflecting upon the Robbers Cave experiment, we are invited to ponder the nature of conflict, both within ourselves and among our communities. It challenges us to consider the origins of our prejudices and the pathways to their resolution. As we traverse the landscapes of our own social environments, Sharif's work encourages a pause, a moment to reflect on how we might cultivate understanding over division, cooperation over conflict. Thus, in the quietude of Robbers Cave State Park, amidst the echoes of youthful voices and the rustle of leaves, lies a lesson as profound today as it was in 1954. It is a testament to the complexities of human interaction, the fragility of peace, and the enduring quest for harmony in a world rife with conflict. In the wind-swept plains of northeastern China, a few miles from the city of Harbin, lies a sobering remnant of history that belies the quiet serenity of its surroundings. During the 1930s and 1940s, this location bore witness to some of the most chilling episodes of human experimentation, orchestrated by the clandestine Unit 731. Officially known as the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army, Unit 731 operated under the guise, yet the reality of its mission was far removed from any noble pursuit of knowledge. Unit 731 was established in 1935, at a time when Japan was expanding its empire across Asia. Led by Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii, a microbiologist with a fervent zeal for biological warfare, the unit's primary objective was to develop and refine biological weapons. Ishii's ambitions were vast, and his methods were ruthless. The unit conducted its experiments on thousands of prisoners, euphemistically called logs, a term that stripped them of their humanity and reduced them to mere subjects in a grotesque scientific exercise. The experiments were as varied as they were horrific. Prisoners were subjected to vivisections without anesthesia, their bodies laid bare for the study of organ function and disease progression. The unit was particularly interested in the effects of frostbite, reflective of the harsh conditions in which they operated. Subjects were forced to endure freezing temperatures until their limbs were solid, after which attempts were made to thaw them using various methods, all meticulously documented. One might pause to ponder the mindset required to carry out such acts. The researchers, many of whom were well-educated and considered themselves scientists, were somehow able to divorce themselves from the moral implications of their work. The war, to them, justified the means. It is a curious reflection on the human psyche, how easily a sense of duty and the pursuit of knowledge can become entangled in a web of ethical blindness. Unit 731 also delved into the study of infectious diseases, including plague, cholera, and anthrax. The researchers unleashed these pathogens on captive populations, observing the ensuing outbreaks with clinical detachment. The implications of their findings were not intended to alleviate suffering, but rather to enhance Japan's military capabilities. The specter of biological warfare loomed large, a chilling reminder of how science can be twisted to serve the darkest of human desires. The ramifications of Unit 731's work extended beyond the immediate suffering it caused. The data collected from these inhumane experiments was later deemed valuable by other world powers, particularly in the wake of World War II. In a disquieting twist, many of the unit's leading figures, including Shiro Ishii, were granted immunity in exchange for their research findings. It raises uncomfortable questions about the ethics of scientific progress and the price we are willing to pay for knowledge. The legacy of Unit 731 is not just a tale from the annals of history, but a cautionary narrative about the perils of unbridled scientific exploration devoid of ethical boundaries. It serves as a stark reminder of the need for a moral compass in the pursuit of knowledge, lest we repeat the mistakes of the past. As we reflect on these events, we are reminded of the profound responsibility that comes with scientific inquiry. The pursuit of knowledge should never come at the expense of our shared humanity. In the quiet of the night, as we drift towards slumber, let us hold onto the conviction that science, wielded with empathy and integrity, has the power to illuminate, not extinguish, the human spirit. In the quiet depths of history, where shadows often conceal the painful truths of our past, we uncover a tale that leaves an indelible mark on the conscience of humanity. The Tuskegee Syphilis study, conducted over the course of 40 years, from 1932 to 1972, stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of ethical boundaries and the profound consequences of their violation. In the early 1930s, the United States was grappling with the aftermath of the Great Depression. It was a time of struggle and hardship, a landscape where the vulnerable often fell through the cracks of society's conscience. In this era of uncertainty, Macon County, Alabama, became the backdrop for a medical study that would echo through time, not for its scientific merit, but for its ethical transgressions. The study, orchestrated by the U.S. Public Health Service, aimed to observe the progression of untreated syphilis in African American men. The participants, mostly impoverished sharecroppers, were led to believe they were receiving free health care for bad blood, a term that encompassed a variety of ailments. Little did they know, the true nature of their involvement was far more sinister. At the heart of this study was a profound deception. The men were not informed of their syphilis diagnosis, nor were they given proper treatment, even when penicillin became widely available in the 1940s as an effective cure for the disease. Instead, they were subjected to periodic examinations and tests, their suffering documented in the name of scientific inquiry. The rationale behind withholding treatment stemmed from a misguided belief that the study would provide valuable insights into the natural history of syphilis. However, this justification crumbles when weighed against the suffering and exploitation of the participants. The men endured the harrowing progression of the disease, which can lead to severe neurological and cardiovascular complications, and in many cases, death. As the years passed, the study continued under the guise of research. The men, oblivious to the reality of their situation, were seen as mere subjects rather than human beings deserving of compassion and care. This dehumanization was not limited to the participants alone. It extended to their families, who also suffered the consequences of untreated disease. The implications of the Tuskegee syphilis study are far-reaching. It served as a catalyst for a broader discussion on medical ethics and the rights of patients. It laid bare the racial prejudices that permeated the medical field, highlighting the systemic inequalities that allowed such a study to persist for decades. In 1972, the study finally came to public attention, thanks to the efforts of a whistleblower and subsequent media coverage. The ensuing outrage led to its termination and spurred significant changes in research ethics. In 1974, the National Research Act was signed into law in the United States, establishing the National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research. This pivotal moment marked the beginning of a new era of ethical oversight in medical research. Yet, the scars of the Tuskegee syphilis study remain. It eroded trust in the medical community, particularly among African Americans, and served as a cautionary tale of what transpires when ethical considerations are cast aside in the pursuit of knowledge. The legacy of this study continues to influence how medical research is conducted today, underscoring the importance of informed consent and the imperative to prioritize the welfare of participants above all else. As we reflect on this chapter of history, we are reminded of the delicate balance between curiosity and compassion. The pursuit of knowledge is a noble endeavor, but it must never come at the expense of our humanity. The Tuskegee syphilis study stands as a testament to the need for vigilance in safeguarding the rights and dignity of all individuals, ensuring that the mistakes of the past are not repeated in the future. In the quiet moments of contemplation, let us carry forward the lessons learned, striving to build a world where ethical boundaries are respected and upheld, where every individual is treated with the dignity they inherently deserve. The story of the Tuskegee syphilis study serves as a beacon, guiding us towards a future where empathy and ethics are the cornerstones of scientific exploration. In the hushed corridors of medical history, certain episodes reverberate more hauntingly than others. Among these is the tale of the Guatemalan STD Experiments, a chapter that began in 1946 and continued for several years, casting long shadows over the ethics of medical research. As the world emerged from the devastation of the Second World War, the landscape of science was one of rapid innovation, but also of moral questioning. It was during this time that Dr. John Charles Cutler, an American physician, embarked on a series of studies that would later be condemned for their flagrant disregard of human rights. Under the guise of advancing public health, these experiments were conducted in the relative obscurity of Guatemala, a country chosen for its perceived lack of oversight and the ability to operate away from the scrutiny that might be present in the United States. The primary aim of these studies was to investigate the efficacy of penicillin in treating sexually transmitted diseases. This, on the surface, seemed a noble pursuit, given the pervasiveness of syphilis and gonorrhea and the potential human suffering they could cause. However, the methods employed were anything but noble. The researchers, funded by the U.S. Public Health Service, intentionally infected vulnerable populations, including prisoners, psychiatric patients, and even soldiers with these diseases without their knowledge or consent. Imagine, if you will, the stark interiors of a Guatemalan prison or the quiet confines of a mental health facility. Within these spaces, Individuals who had already been stripped of much of their autonomy became unwitting subjects in a scientific inquiry that saw them not as people, but as mere vessels for data collection. The ethical breaches here are manifold: the absence of informed consent, the exploitation of vulnerable populations, and the deliberate infliction of harm all contravene the moral imperatives that should govern medical research. The researchers went so far as to arrange for sex workers who had been infected with STDs to have contact with prisoners in an attempt to spread the infections. When these efforts were deemed insufficient, they resorted to more direct methods, such as inoculating the diseases via injections or through abrasions on the skin. These actions starkly illustrate a profound disregard for human dignity and the sanctity of life. It is important to note that this research was not conducted in a vacuum. It was part of a broader pattern of medical experimentation during the early to mid-20th century, where ethical considerations often took a backseat to scientific ambition. Yet, the Guatemalan experiments stand out for the sheer brazenness with which they violated ethical norms, even by the standards of their time. The long-term implications of these experiments were devastating. Many of those infected suffered serious health consequences, and some succumbed to the diseases. The psychological toll on the survivors, knowing they were used as guinea pigs in a foreign nation's experiment, is harder to quantify, but no less significant. In 2010, decades after the experiments had been conducted, the United States government formally apologized to Guatemala for these atrocities. President Barack Obama, in a move to acknowledge and take responsibility for past transgressions, expressed regret over the unethical experiments. This apology, while significant, could not undo the harm that had been inflicted, nor could it erase the memories of those who had suffered. The Guatemalan STD experiments serve as a stark reminder of the potential for science to be misused when detached from ethical oversight. They compel us to reflect on the importance of informed consent and the need for ethical frameworks that protect the dignity of all individuals, regardless of their social or geographic standing. In the broader tapestry of human experimentation, these studies remind us that the quest for knowledge can never justify the means when those means involve the exploitation and harm of our fellow human beings. As we pause and reflect on this dark chapter, we are reminded of the responsibility that comes with the pursuit of scientific discovery. A responsibility to ensure that our curiosity never crosses the line into inhumanity. As we drift through the annals of history, let us hold on to the lessons learned from these past eras. For in acknowledging the mistakes of those who came before us, we pave the way for a future where science serves humanity with integrity and compassion. In this quiet reflection, we find a gentle reminder of the shared human experience, a tapestry woven with care and respect for all its threads. In the hushed corridors of Cold War tension, where shadows loomed larger than tangible entities, there existed a clandestine project that sought to unravel the very fabric of human cognition. This was MK-ULTerra, the Central Intelligence Agency's audacious venture into mind control, a program shrouded in secrecy and speculation, operating under the ominous veil of national security. It emerged in the early 1950s, a time when fear of communist influence stirred the waters of Western consciousness, leading to actions that would challenge the boundaries of ethics and morality. The program was sanctioned in 1953 under the tenure of CIA Director Allen Dulles, with the ostensible goal of developing techniques that could be used for interrogation and psychological manipulation. Yet the approach taken was anything but conventional. At its heart lay a potent chemical lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD, a psychedelic compound that promised to unlock the deepest recesses of the mind. LSD had only recently been synthesized, its effects both fascinating and unpredictable, offering a window into altered states of consciousness that intrigued researchers and operatives alike. With an eye towards creating a truth serum or a mind-control drug, the CIA embarked on a series of experiments that would test the limits of human psyche. What made MK-Ultra particularly disconcerting was its method of execution. Subjects were often unaware of their participation, dosed with LSD without their knowledge or consent. This breach of autonomy and informed consent was justified by the era's pervasive fear, a belief that such measures were necessary to protect democratic values from perceived threats. The experiments took place in various settings, from hospitals to universities, where unsuspecting individuals became unwitting participants in a grand psychological theater. One notable instance involved the use of LSD in a mental health institution, where patients already grappling with psychological distress were subjected to the drug's mind-altering effects. The results were both profound and disturbing, with some individuals experiencing severe anxiety, hallucinations, and long-term psychological trauma. As the program expanded, it enlisted the help of prominent psychologists and psychiatrists who were tasked with designing experiments that pushed the boundaries of ethical research. Among these was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, the chemist and spymaster who spearheaded many of MK-Ultra's initiatives. Under his direction, the program explored a variety of mind-altering substances, from mescaline to psilocybin, each promising new insights into the mechanisms of the human brain. Yet, the ethical implications of these experiments were profound. The disregard for informed consent and the potential harm to participants raised significant moral questions, questions that would echo through the corridors of history long after the program's official termination in 1973. The implications of MK-Ultra extended beyond the immediate effects on its subjects. It set a precedent for the manipulation of human consciousness, a reminder of the potential for science to be wielded as a tool of control rather than liberation. The revelations of MK-Ultra's existence came to light in the 1970s, amid a broader wave of scrutiny into the activities of intelligence agencies. Congressional hearings and investigative journalism uncovered the depths of the program's reach, leading to public outcry and a re-evaluation of the ethical standards governing human experimentation. In the aftermath, new regulations were established, aimed at safeguarding the rights and welfare of research participants. Yet the scars of the past lingered, a testament to the dangers of unchecked ambition. As we reflect on the legacy of MK-Ultra, we are reminded of the delicate balance between exploration and exploitation. The quest to understand the human mind is a noble endeavor, yet it must be pursued with humility and respect for the individual's autonomy. In the quiet moments of contemplation, we ponder the lessons of history, seeking to chart a course that honors the dignity and integrity of all who share in the human experience. In the end, MK-Ultra serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the perils that accompany the pursuit of power and control. It challenges us to consider the ethical dimensions of our actions, to ensure that the quest for knowledge does not come at the expense of our humanity. In this reflection, we find the seeds of wisdom, guiding us towards a future where the pursuit of understanding is tempered by compassion and respect for the sanctity of the human spirit. In the shadowy labyrinth of Cold War espionage, a peculiar chapter unfolds that meanders through the twilight realm of secrecy and moral ambiguity. This chapter centers on Operation Midnight Climax, a clandestine project woven into the fabric of the CIA's wider MK-Ultra mind control experiments. The very name conjures images of intrigue and surreptitious activity, and indeed, the reality was no less sensational. Picture, if you will, discreet apartments nestled within the bustling heart of San Francisco and New York City during the 1950s and 60s. These unassuming locations served as the stage for a series of experiments that strayed far beyond the ethical boundaries of conventional research. The operation was helmed by Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist whose pursuits often danced along the periphery of ethical science. Yet Gottlieb was not alone in this venture. He worked alongside George Hunter White, a colorful character who brought a certain flair to the operation. White, a former narcotics officer with a penchant for unorthodox methods, managed the day-to-day activities of this covert operation. Here, sex workers were employed as unwitting agents of the CIA. Their role was to lure unsuspecting individuals, often men who might be deemed unsavory or merely curious, into these safe houses. Once inside, the participants were plied with drinks laced with LSD, their experiences meticulously observed from behind one-way mirrors. Hidden cameras captured every moment as researchers took notes on the ensuing chaos. It was a theater of the absurd, where human behavior was the subject of intense scrutiny, albeit through a lens of ethical fog. The underlying aim was to study the effects of psychoactive substances on human cognition and behavior, a pursuit driven by the paranoia of the Cold War era. The intelligence community of the time was gripped by the fear of mind control, spurred on by rumors of Soviet and Chinese advances in the field. It was a time when the line between national security and moral responsibility often blurred, and in this haze, Operation Midnight Climax emerged as a particularly perplexing endeavor. As the drug took hold, subjects found themselves adrift in a kaleidoscope of altered perceptions. Conversations veered into the surreal, inhibitions dissolved, and the boundaries of reality seemed to stretch and warp. All the while, the sex workers, themselves often unaware of the full scope of the operation, played their part in this curious dance of deception and discovery. Reflecting on these events, one cannot help but ponder the ethical quagmire that ensued. The individuals involved were seldom informed of the true nature of the experiments, their consent neither sought nor granted. In the quest for knowledge, the sanctity of personal autonomy was sacrificed on the altar of scientific ambition. It is a sobering reminder of how easily ethical considerations can be overshadowed by the allure of discovery. The implications of Operation Midnight Climax reverberated long after the experiments themselves had ceased. The insights gleaned from these studies contributed to a broader understanding of drug-induced psychological states, yet they also cast a long shadow over the reputation of those involved. The fallout from the revelations of such clandestine activities would eventually lead to increased scrutiny of intelligence agencies and their methods. As we contemplate the legacy of Operation Midnight Climax, it serves as a poignant illustration of the perils inherent in unchecked scientific exploration. It prompts us to question the very nature of experimentation and the ethical boundaries that must be maintained to preserve the dignity of all involved. In the end, it is a tale that underscores the delicate balance between the pursuit of knowledge and the respect for human rights, a balance that, once lost, can lead us into the darkest corners of human endeavor. And so, As we drift into reflection, we are left with the haunting echoes of a time when curiosity ventured into shadowy realms, challenging our understanding of morality and the human condition. It is a story that lingers, much like the dim glow of a street lamp in the fog, casting light on the path we have traveled and the lessons we have yet to fully embrace. In the dimly lit corridors of power, where the shadows of secrecy stretch long, we find ourselves pondering the curious application of psychology in the service of interrogation. The term enhanced interrogation seems to carry with it an almost clinical detachment, a euphemism that belies the ethical quagmire beneath its surface. Our exploration unfolds in the years following the attacks of September 11, 2001, when the world was gripped by fear, and the lines between moral certitude and perceived necessity began to blur. In the wake of tragedy, the United States government sought to fortify its intelligence apparatus, casting a wide net to capture those deemed threats. It was within this context that the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, embarked on a controversial journey, melding the insights of academic psychology with the brutal realities of interrogation. The rationale was simple, yet profoundly unsettling, to extract information from detainees who might hold the key to preventing further attacks. The architects of this program turned to the realm of behavioral psychology, drawing upon principles developed over decades. The work of scholars like BFF. Skinner, with his theories of operant conditioning, became a touchstone for those designing interrogation techniques. The idea was to manipulate human behavior, to exert control over the mind through a series of calculated stressors and stimuli. Yet, in the application of such theories, a chilling transformation occurred. What was once a pursuit of understanding became a tool of coercion. Among the techniques employed were those designed to induce a state of learned helplessness, a concept first explored in the 1960s by psychologists Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer. Their experiments on animals revealed that exposure to uncontrollable stresses led to a state of passivity and resignation. In the hands of interrogators, this translated into methods that sought to break the will of detainees, rendering them compliant and more likely to divulge information. The ethical implications of such practices are manifold. At their core lies a fundamental question: can the ends ever justify the means when the means involve the deliberate infliction of psychological distress? This question is not merely academic, it strikes at the heart of our shared humanity and the values we hold dear. Within the sterile confines of a laboratory, the quest for knowledge is bounded by ethical guidelines designed to protect subjects from harm. Yet, in the high-stakes environment of national security, those boundaries were tested and, in many cases, transgressed. The techniques employed under the CIA's program were varied, including waterboarding, stress positions, and sensory deprivation, each designed to degrade the individual's sense of self and agency. These methods were often justified by invoking a ticking time bomb scenario, a hypothetical situation wherein the immediate threat of mass casualties ostensibly necessitates extreme measures. However, the reality proved more complex, as the efficacy of such techniques in reliably extracting truthful information remained contentious. The involvement of psychologists in these interrogations raised significant ethical concerns within the profession. The American Psychological Association, APA, the largest professional body for psychologists in the United States, grappled with the implications of its members participating in or advising on interrogation practices that many viewed as tantamount to torture. The ensuing debate highlighted the tensions between professional ethics and governmental directives, a conflict that reverberated through the field. In examining these events, we are reminded of the case of Stanley Milgram, whose obedience studies in the 1960s revealed the unsettling ease with which individuals could be compelled to act against their moral compass under authoritative pressure. Though Milgram's work was conducted in a controlled environment, the parallels to real-world interrogation are stark. The propensity for individuals to defer ethical judgment in the face of authority is a theme that echoes through history, underscoring the importance of vigilance in the protection of human rights. As we reflect on the CIA's enhanced interrogation program, we are left to ponder the long-term implications of such actions. The psychological scars borne by detainees, the erosion of moral authority on the global stage, and the internal reckonings within the field of psychology itself all serve as reminders of the profound impact that ethical transgressions can have. In the pursuit of security, the lessons of history urge us to remain steadfast in our commitment to the dignity and rights of all individuals, lest we lose sight of the humanity that binds us. In the quiet contemplation of these events, we find an opportunity to reaffirm our values and to ensure that the pursuit of knowledge and security does not come at the expense of our shared ethical foundations. As we traverse the landscape of human experimentation, the echoes of the past remind us that curiosity, while a powerful force for discovery, must always be tempered by compassion and respect for the sanctity of the human spirit. In the annals of medical history, there are tales that echo with a sense of foreboding, whispering of times when the pursuit of knowledge cast aside the moral compass that should guide human endeavors. One such story is that of the Willowbrook State School, an institution that, for many years, lingered on the outskirts of New York City. It was here, in the mid-20th century, that a series of experiments unfolded, shrouded in controversy and ethical ambiguity. These were the Willowbrook Hepatitis Experiments, a chapter that serves as a somber reminder of what can occur when humanity's quest for understanding overrides its compassion. The Willowbrook State School was established in 1947, intended as a haven for children with intellectual disabilities. However, by the 1950s, it had become a place of overcrowding and neglect. The institution, originally designed to accommodate some 4,000 children, swelled to house over 6,000. Conditions were bleak, hygiene was poor, and resources were stretched thin. It was within this environment that Dr. Saul Krugman, a respected pediatrician and medical researcher, saw an opportunity to advance medical science. Hepatitis, an infectious disease affecting the liver, was rampant in the institution. The cramped and unsanitary conditions created a fertile ground for the virus to spread. Dr. Say. Krugman hypothesized that by studying the progression of the disease, he might develop a vaccine. His intentions, wrapped in the cloak of scientific progress, led him to a decision that would forever mark the legacy of Willowbrook. From 1956 to 1971, Krugman and his team deliberately infected newly admitted children with hepatitis. The rationale was that they would likely contract the disease anyway, given the prevailing conditions. Informed consent, a cornerstone of ethical research today, was a notion yet to be fully embraced and rigorously enforced. Parents, desperate for placement in an institution with a long waiting list, were often coerced into compliance, agreeing to the experiments in return for their child's admission. To the outside observer, the justifications seemed tenuous at best. The children, already burdened with disabilities, became subjects in a study that sought to unravel the mysteries of hepatitis, but at a profound cost. The researchers used two strains of the virus, hepatitis A and hepatitis B. The former was typically less severe, while the latter could lead to chronic liver disease. By differentiating the strains, Krugman aimed to chart the disease's course and thereby develop preventative measures. In his quest, Krugman made significant strides. He discovered that gamma globulin could mitigate the effects of hepatitis A, a finding that would contribute to the development of vaccines. Yet, these scientific achievements were overshadowed by the ethical quagmire in which they were born. The question lingered: at what cost should science pursue its truths? The Willowbrook experiments sparked a firestorm of debate. Critics argued that the studies were a gross violation of human rights, exploiting a vulnerable population unable to advocate for themselves. The children, with limited understanding and capacity to consent, were used as means to an end. Defenders, meanwhile, pointed to the potential benefits, citing the advancements in understanding and preventing hepatitis. In retrospect, it is a tale that forces us to grapple with the duality of human endeavor, the capacity for both profound insight and profound oversight. The experiments at Willowbrook are not merely a historical footnote, but a cautionary tale reminding us of the delicate balance between scientific progress and ethical responsibility. As we reflect on this episode, we must consider the broader implications. The events at Willowbrook played a pivotal role in shaping ethical standards in research today. They underscored the necessity for informed consent and highlighted the importance of protecting vulnerable populations in scientific studies. The legacy of these experiments is woven into the fabric of ethical guidelines that govern modern research, serving as a constant reminder of the past transgressions we must strive never to repeat. In the quiet corridors of memory where the stories of Willowbrook reside, we find an enduring lesson. It is a lesson that speaks to the essence of humanity, that in our pursuit of knowledge, we must never lose sight of our moral obligations. The children of Willowbrook, in their unwitting participation, have left us with a poignant reminder of the ethical boundaries we must uphold. As we close this chapter, let us carry forward the lessons learned, ensuring that the progress we seek is always tempered with compassion and respect for those who cannot speak for themselves. The echoes of Willowbrook serve not only as a warning, but as a guidepost for the future, urging us to tread carefully as we navigate the ever-evolving landscape of human exploration. In the quiet corridors of history, where shadows of ethics and ambition intertwine, Holmesburg Prison stands as a stark reminder of the complex interplay between scientific inquiry and human rights. Nestled in Philadelphia, this institution became an unlikely epicenter of dermatological research during the mid-20th century. Here, within the confines of its aging walls, the quest for scientific progress met the reality of human vulnerability. Holmesburg Prison was no ordinary facility. Its stone facade, weathered by time, housed not only those who had transgressed society's rules, but also a laboratory of sorts, a place where scientists, eager to push the boundaries of dermatology, turned to an unusual population. The inmates, seeking respite from the monotony of prison life, were offered incentives that seemed modest, a few dollars, cigarettes, or perhaps the allure of perceived purpose. Yet, what transpired within those walls was far from straightforward. At the heart of these experiments was Dr. Albert Kligman, a name now entwined with both innovation and controversy. It was the 1950s, a time when the world of dermatology was burgeoning with potential discoveries, and Dr. Kligman, with his keen scientific mind, was at the forefront. His work at Holmesburg began ostensibly as a pursuit of knowledge, a desire to understand skin reactions to various substances. However, the ethical lines blurred quickly. Climax's experiments involved a myriad of substances, ranging from commonplace products like shampoos and detergents to far more insidious chemicals. These included dioxins and other agents later classified as hazardous. The inmates, unaware of the full implications, were exposed to these substances under the guise of scientific progress. The notion of informed consent, a cornerstone of ethical research, was tenuously applied, if at all. As we reflect on these events, it is crucial to consider the societal context of the time. The notion of using prisoners for research was not unique to Holmesburg. Across the United States, inmates were often viewed as a convenient population for experimentation, their rights and autonomy overlooked in the name of progress. Yet, the scale and nature of the Holmesburg experiments set them apart, casting a long shadow over the field of dermatology and beyond. Climax's work at Holmesburg yielded significant findings, some of which contributed to the development of widely used dermatological treatments. However, this scientific yield came at a cost borne by those who had little choice in the matter. The skin reactions were sometimes severe, leading to scarring and long-term health issues for some of the participants. The ethical considerations that were sidelined in the rush to discovery would later become a focal point of intense scrutiny and debate. In the broader tapestry of human experimentation, the Holmesburg prison experiments serve as a reminder of the delicate balance between scientific progress and ethical responsibility. The inmates, often from marginalized backgrounds, were caught in a web of exploitation, their bodies used as vehicles for testing without adequate safeguards or genuine informed consent. Reflecting on these events, we are reminded of the importance of ethical oversight in research. The legacy of Holmesburg is not merely a chapter of history, but a lesson etched into the framework of scientific ethics. It underscores the necessity for transparency, respect, and the unwavering recognition of human dignity in all scientific pursuits. In the years that followed, the revelations of the Holmesburg experiments prompted a re-evaluation of ethical standards in research, contributing to the development of guidelines that prioritize the welfare and rights of participants. It is a testament to the resilience of ethical principles that such guidelines emerged, ensuring that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. As we wander through the annals of history, the story of Holmesburg invites quiet reflection on the nature of scientific curiosity and the responsibilities it entails. It is a journey through a landscape where ambition meets morality, a reminder that in the pursuit of knowledge, the human element must never be overshadowed. The echoes of Holmesburg prompt us to ask not only what we can achieve, but how we achieve it, ensuring that the quest for understanding is always tempered by compassion and integrity. In the mid-20th century, a period marked by geopolitical tension and the looming threat of nuclear conflict, a series of experiments took place that would later be scrutinized for their ethical implications. These were the Cold War-era radiation dosing experiments, where civilians and hospital patients were unwittingly exposed to radioactive materials. It was an age when the unknown potential of atomic energy inspired both awe and apprehension, and the boundaries of scientific inquiry were often pushed beyond what we today might find acceptable. During this time, the United States, gripped by the urgency of the Cold War, embarked on numerous research programs aimed at understanding the effects of radiation on human health. The intentions were ostensibly noble, to protect American citizens and military personnel from potential nuclear threats. However, the methods employed often ventured into morally dubious territory. Among the most infamous of these experiments was the one conducted at the University of Cincinnati in the 1960s and early 1970s. Researchers, under the direction of Dr. Eugene Sanger, administered whole-body radiation to patients suffering from various forms of cancer. The stated aim was to study the effects of radiation on human organs, ostensibly to improve treatment protocols. Yet, the doses administered were alarmingly high, equivalent to what one might experience standing near a nuclear blast. Many patients were unaware that they were part of a study designed to observe radiation effects, believing instead that they were receiving therapeutic treatment. These experiments were not isolated incidents. In hospitals across the United States, similar studies were conducted. At the Fernald State School in Massachusetts, a program misleadingly labeled as a science club involved children being fed radioactive oatmeal to study nutrient absorption. The young participants, many of whom were wards of the state, were not informed of the true nature of the experiment. At Vanderbilt University between 1945 and 1947, over 800 pregnant women were given what they were told were nutritional drinks as part of a study on vitamins. Unbeknownst to them, these drinks contained radioactive iron. The researchers aimed to track how the radioactive substance was absorbed by the women's bodies and transferred to their fetuses, all in the name of scientific progress. The long-term effects on both the mothers and their children, though not fully understood, included increased risks of cancer and developmental issues. In reflecting on these events, we are reminded of the fragile line that separates scientific curiosity from ethical misconduct. The Cold War era, with its pervasive fear and fervent desire for technological advancement, often saw this line blurred. Researchers, driven by a combination of genuine scientific interest and the pressures of national security, sometimes overlooked the fundamental ethical principle of informed consent. The implications of these experiments stretch far beyond the immediate physical effects on their subjects. They have fostered a deep mistrust in medical research, a legacy that continues to affect how we perceive scientific authority. The revelations of these experiments led to significant changes in the oversight and conduct of human research. The establishment of the Belmont Report in 1978, which outlined ethical principles and guidelines for research involving human subjects, was a direct response to these and other unethical studies. Yet, the haunting question remains: how do we ensure that the pursuit of knowledge does not come at the expense of our humanity? The radiation dosing experiments of the Cold War era serve as a poignant reminder of the potential for ethical transgressions when scientific ambition overshadows the rights of individuals. They compel us to consider the weight of ethical responsibility borne by those who seek to expand the frontiers of human understanding. As we drift into contemplation, the story of these experiments lingers in the quiet spaces of our minds. It is a narrative not just of scientific endeavor, but of ethical evolution, a testament to the complex interplay between knowledge, power, and morality. In the silence that follows, we are left with a gentle yet persistent call to vigilance, to ensure that the lessons of the past continue to illuminate the path forward, safeguarding the dignity and autonomy of all who partake in the journey of discovery. In the mid-20th century, a time of burgeoning scientific inquiry and exploration, the United States found itself captivated by the potential of nuclear energy and the mysteries of radiation. It was an era marked by optimism and a certain unflinching boldness in the pursuit of knowledge. Yet, within this fervor, ethical boundaries were frequently stretched or outright ignored, sometimes with profound consequences. The Vanderbilt pregnancy study, conducted between 1945 and 1947 at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, offers a poignant example of how curiosity, when unchecked, can lead to questionable practices. The study involved more than 800 pregnant women who were seeking prenatal care at a time when the understanding of nutrition and its impact on fetal development was still evolving. The researchers aimed to investigate the effects of vitamin supplementation during pregnancy, but the study took an unexpected and ethically troubling turn. The women, many of whom came from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, were given a cocktail of vitamins that included radioactive iron. The researchers' intention was to track the absorption and distribution of iron in the body, using the radiation as a traceable marker. However, the participants were not informed that they were ingesting radioactive substances. They were simply told that they were receiving vitamins to improve their health and that of their unborn children. As we reflect on this study, it is important to consider the ethical landscape of the time. The principles of informed consent, which are now central to research ethics, were not yet fully established. The Nuremberg Code, which would later become a cornerstone of ethical guidelines, was only being developed in response to the atrocities of World War II. In this context, the researchers might have believed that their study was justifiable, driven by a desire to advance medical knowledge and improve maternal health. Yet, the long-term implications of their actions were significant. Decades later, follow-up studies revealed that some of the children born to these women experienced increased rates of cancer and other health issues. The radioactive exposure, albeit in small doses, had lingering effects that rippled through the lives of the participants and their families. This study, like many of its era, serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between scientific progress and ethical responsibility. In the years that followed, the revelations about the Vanderbilt study and others like it sparked a broader conversation about the rights of research participants and the responsibilities of scientists. The need for transparency, informed consent, and respect for individuals became increasingly apparent, leading to the development of more rigorous ethical standards. The Vanderbilt pregnancy study is a testament to the complexities of scientific research. It underscores the importance of ethical considerations in the pursuit of knowledge and the potential consequences of neglecting these principles. As we look back on this chapter of history, it is a call to remember that progress should never come at the cost of our humanity. Let us pause to reflect on the lessons learned from this study. In the quiet stillness, we can appreciate the strides made in research ethics and the safeguards now in place to protect participants. Yet, we must remain vigilant, for history has shown us that the path to discovery is fraught with challenges and moral dilemmas. As we continue our exploration of scientific inquiry and its impact on human lives, let us do so with a spirit of curiosity tempered by compassion and respect. For it is in this balance that we find the true essence of progress, one that honors both the quest for knowledge and the dignity of all individuals. In the quiet aftermath of the Second World War, a time when the world was still catching its breath and contemplating the lessons learned, a different kind of battle was being waged in the shadows. It was a battle not of nations against nations, but of scientists and strategists against the unknown. The United Kingdom, like many other countries, was deeply invested in understanding the potential threats posed by biological warfare. What if a foreign power were to unleash a deadly pathogen upon the unsuspecting public? How would it spread, and how could its impact be mitigated? These are the questions that occupied the minds of those tasked with protecting the nation. In pursuit of answers, the UK embarked upon a series of secretive experiments that would come to be known as Operation Sea Spray. While the name might evoke images of gentle ocean mist, the reality was far more insidious. It was a covert operation that saw civilians unwittingly exposed to bacteria, their daily lives transformed into living laboratories. The aim was to study how biological agents might disperse and affect a population, a grim necessity, it was argued, in the uncertain theater of Cold War geopolitics. The operation took place in the 1950s and 1960s, a time when the fear of biological warfare was palpable. In an era defined by the arms race and the specter of nuclear annihilation, it was assumed that the next great weapon might be microscopic. Thus, the experiments were designed to simulate an attack using bacteria that were believed to be harmless. These bacteria were released into the air, sometimes from ships at sea, sometimes from vehicles on land, and their spread was meticulously monitored. One of the key agents used in these tests was Bacillus globigii, a bacterium chosen because it was thought to be benign, a stand-in for more dangerous pathogens like anthrax. The choice of this particular bacterium was not made lightly. It was selected precisely because it could mimic the dispersion patterns of more lethal agents without causing harm, or so it was believed at the time. The tests were conducted in various locations, each chosen for its unique characteristics. Cities, rural areas, and even the London Underground were all part of this vast, invisible experiment. In one instance, a cloud of bacteria was released over the south coast of England, its movement tracked by scientists keen to understand how far and wide it would travel. The results were illuminating, demonstrating just how easily a pathogen could spread across an entire region, carried by the winds and the movements of everyday life. While the operation provided valuable data, it also raised significant ethical concerns. The civilians who formed the unwitting subjects of these experiments were never informed, a fact that sits uneasily with contemporary notions of consent and transparency. The justification at the time was that revealing the true nature of the experiments would compromise their validity. After all, if people knew they were being observed, their behavior might change, skewing the results. Yet, this rationale does little to comfort those who later discovered they had been part of such trials. The potential implications for public trust are profound. When the state conducts experiments on its own citizens without their knowledge or consent, it raises questions about the boundaries of governmental power and the responsibilities of those who wield it. The long-term implications of these experiments were not fully understood at the time. Although Bacillus globigii was considered harmless, later research suggested that it might not be as innocuous as first thought. Some strains can cause infections, particularly in those with compromised immune systems. This revelation casts a shadow over the operation, highlighting the unforeseen risks inherent in using living organisms as proxies for more dangerous pathogens. In reflecting on Operation Sea Spray, we find ourselves at the intersection of necessity and ethics. The desire to protect a nation must be balanced against the rights and well-being of its citizens. The legacy of these tests serves as a reminder of the delicate balance that must be maintained between security and freedom, a balance that remains as pertinent today as it was in the mid-20th century. As we contemplate these events from our modern vantage point, we are reminded of the importance of transparency and accountability in scientific research. The lessons of the past implore us to consider the ethical dimensions of our actions and to ensure that the pursuit of knowledge does not come at the expense of human dignity. In the quiet moments of reflection, we recognize that the true measure of a society lies not only in its achievements, but also in its commitment to uphold the values of trust, respect, and compassion for all its members. In the world of social science, the boundaries of ethical research have often been tested, sometimes with unsettling results. One such instance occurred in the late 1960s when a sociologist named Lord Humphreys embarked on a study that would come to be known as the Tearoom trade study. This study focused on the clandestine sexual encounters between men in public restrooms, commonly referred to as tea rooms, and sought to understand the social dynamics and implications of these interactions. Humphreys, driven by a desire to shed light on a largely hidden aspect of society, took on the role of a watch queen, a lookout who would warn participants of potential police presence. In doing so, he was able to observe these encounters firsthand. This role provided him with an unusual vantage point, enabling him to gather data on the behaviors and patterns of the men involved. However, it was his methods of data collection and the subsequent fallout that would raise profound ethical questions. The study's ethical controversy began with Humphrey's decision to record the license plate numbers of the men he observed. With this information, he later tracked down their addresses through the police, a process that today would be considered a serious breach of privacy. Humphreys then visited these men at their homes under the guise of a health survey, gathering further personal information without disclosing the true nature of his research. At the time, the study was groundbreaking in its revelation that many of the men who participated in these encounters were not homosexual in their daily lives. Humphreys found that a significant number were married and led ostensibly conventional lives. This challenged prevalent stereotypes and assumptions about homosexuality and public sexual activity, contributing to a broader understanding of human sexuality and the complexities of identity. However, the ethical implications of Humphrey's methods sparked a heated debate that continues to resonate in discussions of research ethics. The covert nature of his observations, combined with the deception involved in his follow-up visits, raised serious questions about the right to privacy and informed consent. Humphreys justified his approach by arguing that the public nature of the tearooms and the anonymity of the participants mitigated concerns about privacy. Yet, critics contended that the participants' anonymity was violated when Humphreys pursued them beyond the confines of the tearooms. The Tearoom trade study became a pivotal case in the field of research ethics, illustrating the delicate balance between the pursuit of knowledge and the respect for individual rights. It underscored the importance of informed consent, a principle that serves as a cornerstone of ethical research practices today. Informed consent requires that participants are fully aware of the nature of the research, the procedures they will undergo, and any potential risks involved, allowing them to make a voluntary and informed decision about their participation. In reflecting on Humphrey's work, we find ourselves considering the broader implications of his study. While it undoubtedly contributed valuable insights into human behavior and societal norms, it also highlighted the potential for harm when ethical boundaries are crossed. The personal risks faced by the men he studied were not merely theoretical. being exposed could have led to devastating consequences, including social ostracism, familial disruption, and even legal repercussions, given the social climate of the time. The Tearoom trade study serves as a reminder of the responsibilities that accompany the pursuit of knowledge. Researchers must navigate the complex interplay between curiosity and ethics, ensuring that their work respects the dignity and autonomy of those they study. It prompts us to question how much we are willing to sacrifice in the name of understanding and whether the ends can ever justify the means. As we reflect on this chapter of social science history, we are invited to consider the lessons it imparts not only to researchers, but to society as a whole. The study challenges us to think critically about privacy, consent, and the ethical dimensions of observation. It reminds us that, even in the pursuit of truth, we must remain vigilant in upholding the principles of respect and fairness. In the quiet moments of reflection, we ponder the legacy of Humphrey's work and the enduring conversation it sparked. It is a testament to the complexities of human nature and the ever-evolving landscape of ethical research. The Tearoom trade study, with all its controversies, compels us to question, to learn, and to strive for a better understanding of both the world around us and our place within it. In the hushed corridors of mid-20th century America, a curious endeavor was set in motion, one that promised to illuminate the paths of troubled youth and lead them towards brighter futures. The Cambridge Somerville Youth Study, initiated in 1939, was a bold venture into the burgeoning field of social intervention. Its mission was simple, yet noble, to prevent delinquency and improve life outcomes for boys deemed at risk. However, like many well-intentioned human experiments, it would come to demonstrate the unpredictable and often unintended consequences of meddling in the human condition. The study was conceived by a group of earnest researchers led by Dr. Richard Clark Cabot and later Edwin Powers. They were driven by an optimistic belief in the power of guidance and mentorship. The plan involved enrolling over 500 boys from underprivileged backgrounds in Cambridge and Somerville, Massachusetts. These boys, aged between 5 and 13, were carefully selected by schools and welfare agencies based on their perceived vulnerability to future delinquent behavior. Half of the participants were randomly assigned to receive a battery of interventions, including counseling, tutoring, and recreational activities. The other half, serving as a control group, were left to the devices of the normal social structures surrounding them. The researchers hoped that the boys receiving the interventions would flourish into well-adjusted adults, free from the shackles of criminality and societal marginalization. For years, the boys in the treatment group were nurtured by a cadre of social workers and volunteers who sought to imbue them with positive values and practical life skills. The mentors worked tirelessly, sometimes forming deep bonds with the boys, guiding them through the tumultuous waters of adolescence. On paper, it seemed a recipe for success, a testament to the transformative power of proactive social support. Yet, as time passed and the boys grew into men, the results of the study painted a surprisingly bleak picture. When follow-ups were conducted decades later, the data revealed a counterintuitive outcome. The boys who received the interventions were more likely to have been arrested, exhibited more signs of mental health issues, and were less satisfied with their lives than those left to their own devices. This was a perplexing and disheartening revelation. How could a program designed to uplift have seemingly done the opposite? The answers lie in the complex interplay of human psychology and the unintended consequences of social engineering. The constant scrutiny and intervention, it appeared, may have inadvertently reinforced feelings of inadequacy and dependency among the boys. Being singled out for special treatment might have underscored a sense of otherness, a belief that they were somehow deficient or fundamentally flawed. Furthermore, the presence of well-meaning adults, though supportive, could not entirely counteract the boys' environmental realities. In some cases, the interventions may have disrupted the boys' natural social networks, distancing them from their peers and communities. Rather than integrating the boys into a broader social fabric, the study may have isolated them further, creating a reliance on external validation that was unsustainable in the long term. As the decades unfolded, the Cambridge-Somerville Youth Study became a touchstone in discussions about the ethics and efficacy of social intervention. It highlighted the importance of humility and caution when attempting to alter human lives, even with the best intentions. The study served as a reminder that human beings are not mere subjects to be shaped and molded according to theoretical models. They are complex, resilient, and often resistant to artificial manipulation. In reflecting on the study, we find a lesson in the delicate balance required in social science, the need to tread lightly, to respect the intricate and often hidden dynamics of individual lives. The outcomes of the Cambridge-Somerville Youth Study underscore the necessity of comprehensive understanding before intervention, the importance of context over prescription, and the unpredictability of human behavior when subject to external forces. This chapter in the Annals of Human Experimentation offers a sobering narrative, one that encourages us to question our assumptions and approach the human condition with a gentle hand. It is a story of unintended consequences, reminding us that in our quest to illuminate the darkness, we must be ever mindful of the shadows we might cast. As we ponder these events, we are left with a quiet contemplation of the complexities of human nature and the profound impact of even the most well-intended actions. In the dim, quiet corners of scientific inquiry, where curiosity mingles with the shadows of ethical ambiguity, we find the human sleep deprivation experiments. These studies, set against the backdrop of an ever-advancing understanding of the human mind, invite us to ponder the intricate tapestry of consciousness that unravels when sleep is withheld. Sleep, a state so natural and necessary, remains a frontier of scientific exploration, and it is here that researchers, driven by a desire to understand its depths, have occasionally ventured beyond the comforting glow of morality. To understand the implications of depriving the human body of rest, we must first acknowledge the delicate balance that sleep maintains within our physiological and psychological realms. Sleep is not merely a pause in our waking life, it is a vital process that facilitates memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and cellular repair. The experiments that sought to strip individuals of this essential function did so under the guise of scientific progress, often pushing volunteers to the precipice of cognitive collapse. In the mid-20th century, when science was unfurling its wings in unprecedented ways, researchers began to scrutinize the effects of prolonged wakefulness on the human body and mind. Among the most infamous of these studies was the 1964 experiment conducted by a high school student named Randy Gardner, who, aided by Dr. William C. Dement, set out to break the world record for the longest period without sleep. Over 11 days, Gardner remained awake, his experiences meticulously documented by Dement, one of the founding fathers of sleep research. As the days stretched on, Gardner's cognitive faculties began to fray. Initially, he experienced mood changes and difficulties with concentration. As wakefulness persisted, his perception blurred, hallucinations crept in, and his memory faltered. By the end of the experiment, Gardner's mental state was a patchwork of confusion and exhaustion, yet his physical health remained surprisingly intact. His youthful resilience perhaps shielded him from more severe consequences, but the experiment underscored the profound impact of sleep deprivation on cognitive function. This exploration of sleeplessness did not end with Gardner. In the decades that followed, more controlled environments emerged, with researchers experimenting on volunteers to unravel the mysteries of sleep deprivation. These studies often involved participants staying awake for extended periods in laboratory settings, where their cognitive performance, emotional stability, and physiological responses were meticulously recorded. One such study, conducted in 1989 by Dr. Alan Rechtschaffen and his team at the University of Chicago, observed rats subjected to total sleep deprivation. The rats, monitored around the clock, gradually succumbed to a mysterious deterioration of health, culminating in death after a few weeks. While the exact cause of death remained elusive, the study vividly illustrated that sleep is as essential to life as food or water. For humans, the effects of sleep deprivation are no less profound, though rarely as fatal in controlled settings. Cognitive decline is one of the first indicators, with experiments revealing significant impairments in attention, reaction time, and decision-making abilities. As hours without sleep accumulate, the brain's ability to process information declines, akin to the effects of alcohol intoxication. Emotional instability often follows, with irritability and mood swings becoming more pronounced. In more extreme cases, hallucinations and paranoia can manifest. These symptoms, reminiscent of psychiatric disorders, highlight the brain's desperate attempts to reconcile a lack of restorative sleep. Volunteers in such experiments often report vivid and unsettling illusions, a testament to the brain's intricate interplay of reality and imagination when deprived of its nightly respite. Beyond cognitive and emotional disturbances, sleep deprivation impacts physical health. The immune system weakens, making the body more susceptible to illness. Hormonal imbalances occur, affecting everything from metabolism to stress responses. The cardiovascular system, too, bears the brunt, with prolonged wakefulness linked to increased blood pressure and heightened risk of heart disease. Yet, despite the wealth of data gleaned from these studies, the ethical implications persist. Many of these experiments, while conducted with volunteer consent, edge uncomfortably close to ethical boundaries. The pursuit of knowledge, noble as it may be, must be tempered with respect for the well-being of participants. In the quest to understand the necessity of sleep, researchers are continually reminded of the fine line between curiosity and carelessness. As we reflect on these studies, a broader philosophical question emerges. What does it mean to deprive a sentient being of rest? Sleep, a bridge between consciousness and the subconscious, serves as a reminder of our vulnerability and humanity. It is a state where our minds unburden themselves, where dreams whisper truths and fantasies in equal measure. To disrupt this natural rhythm is to challenge the very essence of our existence. In closing, the exploration of sleep deprivation serves as both a scientific endeavor and a philosophical meditation. It invites us to consider the delicate dance between knowledge and ethics, to ponder the mysteries of consciousness that sleep both obscures and reveals. As we drift into slumber, let us appreciate the profound necessity of this nightly ritual, a testament to the intricate design of life that even the brightest minds seek to comprehend. The third-wave classroom experiment is a stark reminder of how easily the allure of power and conformity can take root, even in the most unsuspecting environments. Our story unfolds in a high school classroom in Palo Alto, California, during the spring of 1967. The Vietnam War was casting long shadows over American society, and questions of authority and rebellion pervaded the lives of students and teachers alike. It was in this climate that history teacher Ron Jones embarked on a journey, both as an educator and an unwitting architect of one of the most compelling psychological experiments in recent memory. He set out to answer a question that had been troubling him, as well as his students. How could ordinary citizens in Nazi Germany have so readily embraced fascism? Could a similar phenomenon happen here, in a seemingly free and democratic society? Jones's approach was not to lecture or present abstract concepts. Instead, he opted for an experiential lesson. It began innocuously enough, with a few simple rules designed to instill discipline and unity. Students were instructed to sit in proper posture, addressing him as Mr. Jones with the utmost respect. They were given a salute to use as a greeting, a gesture reminiscent of certain totalitarian regimes, but cloaked in the guise of classroom decorum. As the days progressed, Jones introduced the concept of strength through discipline, followed by strength through community. The class was organized into a tightly knit unit, with students feeling a part of something larger than themselves. Surprisingly, the students embraced these principles with enthusiasm. The classroom atmosphere shifted from casual learning to an environment charged with a sense of purpose and belonging. Jones was both fascinated and alarmed by the fervor with which his students adopted these new ideals. They were not merely following instructions, they were thriving within this new framework. The experiment evolved organically, each day building upon the last. Jones introduced uniforms of sorts, and a slogan was crafted, "Strength through action." The students, now calling themselves the third wave, moved with synchronized precision as if part of a well-oiled machine. The experiment, though originally intended to last only a day or two, extended into a full week. By then, it had taken on a life of its own. The sense of inclusion and power was intoxicating, and the students were not the only ones drawn in by its allure. Word of the third wave spread throughout the school, and students from outside the original class sought to join. What had begun as a controlled educational exercise was spiraling into something far more profound and potentially dangerous. Jones, recognizing the need to bring the experiment to a close, devised a final act. He announced a rally, promising to reveal the movement's true purpose. The students, filled with anticipation, gathered in the school auditorium. But instead of unveiling a grand plan, Jones revealed the truth, that they had unwittingly been part of a simulation of fascism, mirroring the kind of indoctrination that had led to the rise of totalitarian regimes. He showed them a documentary about Nazi Germany, drawing parallels to their own behavior over the past week. The revelation was a shock. Silence enveloped the room as the students grappled with the realization of how easily they had been swayed, how readily they had surrendered their individuality for the promise of collective power and identity. The exercise had held a mirror to their actions, highlighting the underlying currents of human nature that can make such movements possible. In the aftermath, the students were left to ponder the implications of their experience, and Jones himself faced criticism for the psychological impact of the experiment. Yet, the lessons learned were invaluable. The third wave experiment served as a powerful demonstration of how quickly conformity can erode personal freedoms and how seductive the call of authoritarianism can be, even in a society that prides itself on its democratic principles. For us, the story of the third wave is a poignant reminder of the fragility of human nature. It underscores the importance of vigilance and self-awareness in safeguarding our freedoms. The boundaries between guidance and control, between unity and uniformity, are often thin and easily crossed. As we reflect on this chapter in history, we are invited to consider the delicate balance between order and chaos, between the need for belonging and the imperative for autonomy. Thus, the third wave classroom experiment remains a cautionary tale, one that resonates with the timeless question of how we, as individuals and as a society, choose to navigate the complex interplay of power, identity, and freedom. As we drift into the quietude of the night, let us hold these reflections close, allowing them to gently shape our dreams and thoughts in the peaceful hours to come. In the quiet, interconnected world of the early 21st century, where digital platforms weave through the fabric of our daily lives, a subtle yet profound experiment unfolded, touching the emotions of hundreds of thousands without their explicit awareness. This was not conducted in a sterile laboratory, but rather within the familiar confines of a social network, where friends, family, and acquaintances share their lives in a curated, constant stream. The platform, Facebook, known for its global connectivity, became the stage for a study that probed the very nature of human sentiment and our susceptibility to digital influence. In 2012, Facebook embarked on a psychological study that would later ignite debates about ethics in the digital age. The study, conducted over 1 week in January, was designed to test whether the content that users were exposed to could influence their emotional states. More than a simple curiosity, this inquiry tapped into a broader question of how our digital environments shape our psychological well-being. The researchers, including a team from Cornell University, aimed to discern whether the tone of newsfeed content could sway the emotional tone of users' subsequent posts. To achieve this, the experiment manipulated the news feeds of nearly 700,000 users without their informed consent. By adjusting the algorithm that determines which posts appear in a user's feed, the researchers could either amplify positive or negative content. Some users saw a higher proportion of positive posts, while others encountered more negative content. The hypothesis was straightforward. If one is exposed to positive content, they may be more likely to share positive updates themselves, and vice versa for negative content. This manipulation of emotional content, subtle and unseen, tapped into the vast, invisible network of social influence. It raised an essential question: how much of our mood and behavior is a reflection of the content we consume online? The results suggested that emotions could indeed be contagious through digital interaction. Users exposed to positive content were more likely to express positivity in their posts, while those who saw more negative content tended to share more negatively tinged updates. The implications of these findings were as vast as the network itself. They suggested that platforms like Facebook, with their sophisticated algorithms, held significant power over the emotional currents of their users. Such influence, wielded without the user's knowledge, sparked a fierce debate about the ethics of digital experimentation. Unlike traditional experiments, where participants are informed and consent is explicitly given, this study was conducted under the cloak of daily digital life. where the boundaries between personal agency and algorithmic control blur. Critics argued that the study violated ethical standards, particularly the principle of informed consent. In traditional scientific research, participants must be aware of their involvement in a study and understand its potential impact. Here, however, the users were unwitting subjects, their emotional lives subtly shaped without their understanding or permission. This raised questions about autonomy and the right to control one's emotional environment. Yet, amid the torrent of criticism, some defended the study, highlighting the potential insights gained into human behavior and the nature of digital interactions. They argued that understanding how digital content affects us is crucial in an era where online interactions increasingly define social life. This knowledge, they suggested, could be used to foster more positive and supportive digital environments. The debate also touched upon the broader ethical responsibilities of technology companies. As gatekeepers of vast troves of personal data, these companies possess unprecedented power to influence public sentiment. The Facebook experiment underscored the need for a nuanced discussion about the ethical use of data and the transparency of digital platforms. Should companies be allowed to conduct such experiments without explicit consent, and what safeguards should be in place to protect users? In the wake of the controversy, Facebook and other technology companies faced increased scrutiny over their handling of user data and the ethical implications of their algorithms. This experiment served as a catalyst for discussions about digital ethics, privacy, and the responsibilities of platforms in shaping not just our social connections, but our very emotions. As we reflect on the Facebook emotional manipulation experiment, we are reminded of the delicate balance between innovation and ethics. The digital world offers boundless possibilities for understanding human behavior, yet with this potential comes the responsibility to safeguard the rights and well-being of individuals. In an age where our lives are increasingly mediated by screens and algorithms, the question of how to navigate this new terrain with integrity and respect remains ever pertinent. In the quiet hum of digital life, unseen forces shape our moods and interactions. The Facebook experiment, with its subtle manipulation of emotions, serves as a poignant reminder of the power and responsibility that come with digital innovation. As we continue to explore the depths of human experience through the lens of technology, let us do so with a thoughtful consideration of the ethical landscapes we navigate. In the 1990s, a curious wave of psychological exploration emerged, examining the effects of isolation on the human mind. Inspired by earlier experiments with animals, researchers sought to understand the depths of human resilience, or lack thereof, when faced with solitude. While the intentions behind these studies often lean towards understanding and bettering human conditions, the methods sometimes echoed a sinister past. The term pit of despair, originally coined by psychologist Harry Harlow, referred to his controversial experiments on rhesus monkeys. These studies aimed to simulate extreme isolation and observe its psychological impacts. As we delve into the human analogues of these experiments, we enter a realm where science tiptoes precariously along the edges of ethics and empathy. Picture, if you will, a small, windowless room. The walls are plain, offering no distraction or comfort. Within this space, a participant sits, cut off from the outside world. The silence is profound, almost tangible, enveloping the room like a heavy fog. The objective here is simple yet profound: to observe how the human psyche copes or crumbles under sustained isolation. These studies were not just about understanding loneliness, but exploring the broader implications of social deprivation, an experience shared by many across different contexts, from astronauts to prisoners. In one notable study conducted during this era, participants were asked to remain in isolation for extended periods, ranging from a few days to several weeks. The rules were strict: no external communication, no access to timekeeping devices, and minimal human interaction. The researchers observed a range of psychological effects, from heightened anxiety and depression to hallucinations and a distorted sense of time. These responses, while varied, illuminated the fragile nature of human cognition when stripped of social interaction and environmental stimulation. The long-term implications of these experiments raise significant ethical questions. On one hand, they provided invaluable insights into the human condition, particularly in understanding how isolation can affect mental health. Such findings have been instrumental in shaping policies and practices in environments where isolation is unavoidable, such as in space missions or solitary confinement in prisons. On the other hand, the ethical considerations of subjecting individuals to such extreme conditions cannot be overlooked. The potential for psychological harm was real, and the voluntary nature of participation did not mitigate the ethical dilemmas involved. Reflecting on these experiments, we are reminded of the delicate balance between scientific inquiry and moral responsibility. The quest for knowledge must never overshadow the imperative to protect and respect the subjects of research, particularly when the human mind is involved. The lessons learned from these studies continue to influence current research practices, underscoring the importance of ethical safeguards and the need for empathy in scientific pursuits. As we ponder the implications of isolation, we are also drawn to the broader societal context. In an increasingly connected world, the paradox of loneliness persists. Despite advancements in communication technology, many individuals experience profound isolation. These experiments, though conducted in controlled settings, mirror real-world experiences of solitude and social disconnection. Understanding the psychological effects of isolation is crucial in addressing the mental health challenges faced by many today. In conclusion, the 1990s studies on isolation-induced psychological collapse offer a poignant reminder of the complexities inherent in human research. While they provided valuable insights into the human psyche, they also highlighted the ethical considerations that must guide scientific exploration. As we continue to probe the mysteries of the mind, let us do so with compassion and a commitment to upholding the dignity of all individuals. In the quiet corridors of scientific inquiry, where the thirst for knowledge navigates the sometimes murky waters of ethics, we arrive at a crossroads of profound significance. It is here, at this intersection, that we must pause and ponder the delicate balance between the pursuit of understanding and the sanctity of human dignity. We are not the first to grapple with these questions, nor shall we be the last. Yet, each generation is tasked with the responsibility to learn from the past, to ensure that curiosity does not eclipse compassion. Ethics, at its core, serves as the moral compass guiding human endeavors. It is the silent arbiter that whispers caution amidst the roar of discovery, reminding us that the ends do not always justify the means. But why, one might ask, are these boundaries so crucial? The answer lies in the very fabric of what makes us human. Our capacity for empathy, our ability to see the world through the eyes of another, is what sets us apart. It is this shared humanity that demands respect, irrespective of the quest for knowledge. History, however, bears witness to times when these boundaries have been tested, stretched, and occasionally shattered. In the wake of such transgressions, we are left to piece together the fragments of trust and integrity. The erosion of ethical standards often begins with small, seemingly benign transgressions. A minor oversight here, a slight bending of the rules there, all can pave the way for more significant ethical breaches. It is a slippery slope, one that requires vigilance and unwavering commitment to principle. In the realm of scientific experimentation, ethical guidelines are not merely formalities to be observed, but are foundational pillars that uphold the integrity of research. They serve to protect both the subject and the researcher, creating a framework within which meaningful and respectful exploration can occur. Without these guidelines, the very purpose of research is called into question, as is the validity of its outcomes. Consider the role of informed consent. It is a principle that underscores the right of individuals to make knowledgeable decisions about their participation in research. It is not enough to simply inform. Understanding must be achieved and autonomy respected. The absence of informed consent not only undermines the ethical foundation of the study, but also violates the rights of the individuals involved. Moreover, the concept of beneficence, the obligation to do good, is central to ethical research. Researchers are entrusted with the welfare of their subjects, a responsibility that extends beyond the confines of the laboratory. It is their duty to ensure that the potential benefits of the research outweigh any risks, and to minimize harm wherever possible. This duty of care is a testament to the trust placed in the scientific community by society at large. Yet, the path to ethical enlightenment is fraught with challenges. The allure of groundbreaking discoveries, the pressure to publish, and the competitive nature of funding can all conspire to blur ethical lines. In such an environment, the moral compass can falter, and ethical considerations may be relegated to the periphery. It is in these moments of vulnerability that the strength of our ethical convictions is truly tested. Education and awareness play pivotal roles in fortifying these convictions. By ingraining ethical principles into the fabric of scientific training, we empower researchers to navigate the complex landscape of moral dilemmas with confidence and clarity. This is not merely a theoretical exercise, but a practical necessity. For it is only through understanding the potential consequences of our actions that we can hope to make choices that honor the dignity of all involved. Furthermore, oversight and accountability are indispensable in maintaining ethical standards. Institutional review boards, ethics committees, and regulatory bodies serve as guardians of ethical integrity, scrutinizing research proposals to ensure compliance with established guidelines. These entities provide a vital check on the power dynamics inherent in research, acting as a bulwark against exploitation and abuse. However, it is not enough to rely solely on external oversight. Ethical responsibility must be internalized, a guiding principle that informs every decision and action. It is a personal commitment to uphold the values of honesty, respect, and integrity, regardless of external pressures or incentives. This commitment must be nurtured and reinforced at every stage of one's career, a constant reminder of the greater purpose that underlies the scientific endeavor. As we reflect on the current state of ethical standards in research, we are reminded of the importance of vigilance. The lessons of the past are not merely historical footnotes, but cautionary tales that highlight the fragility of ethical boundaries. We must remain ever watchful, ensuring that the pursuit of knowledge does not come at the expense of our humanity. In conclusion, the ethics we strive to uphold are not archaic relics of a bygone era, but essential components of a bygone era, but essential components of a just and equitable society. They are the threads that weave together the tapestry of human understanding, grounding our aspirations in a framework of respect and compassion. As we continue to explore the vast unknown, let us do so with a steadfast commitment to these principles, for in their preservation lies the true measure of our progress.